Welcome to the 13th edition of the Bronx Bomber Blog podcast. I'm Steven Erickson, joined here with Chad Rains today. We're going to discuss a range of issues ranging from the Aroldis Chapman and Matt Holliday signings, recent trade rumors, and other off-season going-ons. And with that, I'll pass it along to Chad. Chad, how are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty well. It's been a while since we've talked to everybody. We haven't actually done a podcast since August 17th. So being that this is our first one of the offseason, we are going to talk about the offseason moves that the Yankees made. I know we've already touched on them if you've been reading, but yeah, we're going to talk about those first. So obviously we know the Yankees signed Matt Holliday and they also signed Aroldis Chapman. Matt Holliday came on with a one-year deal worth $13 million. Pretty low risk, high reward type deal. Honestly, one that we kind of expected out of the Yankees. We knew they were probably going to sign a DH because for me, there's no youth movement at DH. Obviously, we have the young guys in the outfield and the infield, but at DH, it doesn't really matter. And honestly, I would much rather have Matt Holliday DHing than Tyler Austin because in my mind, Tyler Austin is too athletic to DH this early in his career. So, yeah, Matt Holliday, 1 year, $13 million. He's definitely going to hit in the middle of the order. He battled some injuries last year, but still played 110 games and hit 20 home runs, which he hit 20 home runs in 2014, but he also played 156 games, which is pretty noteworthy because, you know, the power is still there, even though he will be 37 by opening day. He's still got a lot of pop and can definitely fill the middle of the order void that we may have.
Yeah, the Holiday signing was interesting, mainly because I didn't really see it coming. But like you said, it's sort of that low risk, high reward kind of thing that we've seen the Yankees do these last couple of off seasons. Not a significant commitment, obviously only 1 year deal, and he also has a pretty extensive injury history. So if something were to go south there, it wouldn't exactly be the end of the world. Granted, we don't want that to happen, but it's within the realm of possibility. I think his numbers will translate well in Yankee Stadium, and he should be a solid, provided he could be healthy, of course, he should be a solid middle of the lineup hitter. So I'm excited to see Holliday, and it's nice also to have that continued veteran presence as we move forward with this youth movement. I also agree with what you were saying about Tyler Austin. I think Tyler Austin, I don't really know where I see him with this team long term or whether or not he'll be moved because he doesn't really have a defined position. But it's nice to know that you have an insurance policy who can play third base, who can play first base, who can play both of the corner outfield positions and DH when needed. So I think that's definitely, it's a huge plus to have with this team. We thought Rev Snyder could fill that. So it'll be interesting to see that dynamic moving forward too. But I think the Holiday signing was very good, and it could turn out to be one of Brian Cashman's best moves in a long time if he stays healthy and produces as we expect him to.
Right. So we saw Holliday hit 246 last season, but I actually covered the Matt Holliday signing shortly after he signed. I kind of broke it down, and he was absolutely victimized by a bad BABIP, which is basically your batting average on balls in play. He hit only 253 there. Another interesting note for Yankee Stadium is that he averaged 19.1 at-bats per home run last season, which was an improvement over his 22.3 at-bats per home run career average. And 14.9% of his fly balls went out of the yard for home runs. He also hits to right center, which obviously we know that is basically home run alley at Yankee Stadium. So as a right-handed batter who can hit the ball the other way and hit for power, hit for average, I think it's a great signing for the Yankees. He'll definitely, like I said, fill in the middle of the batting order, the heart of the order. And now he'll join Aaron Judge and Gary Sanchez as two big right-handed bats. He'll offer a little bit of protection, and still, the Yankees still have a couple left-handed batters that, you know, make up that lineup. But the presence of right-handers is definitely going to help balance out the lineup.
Yeah, to go off of that, I was going to mention that as well, because if you think about it, over the last few years, their only major specific right-handed power bat was Alex Rodriguez. And he hasn't really been, well, in 2015, he was a pretty big threat. But before that, he had been off the map for various reasons for the last few seasons. And I think getting the right-handed power bats is really big, especially considering if you look at the Yankees signings over the years, they've specifically been looking at that the short porch in left field, whether it be, you know, Brian McCann, who was using it to his advantage. Or, you had Beltran and Teixeira. They were switch hitters, but they saw most of their time from the left-handed side. So it's definitely nice to balance out the order with some right-handers as well.
And then one more quick statistic on Matt Holliday. Last season, he was one of only 2 players in the major leagues to average an exit velocity of 95 miles per hour or higher, while also striking out 20% of the time or less. And he joined Miguel Cabrera. So, like I said, this guy is going to be 37 years old actually here in about 2 weeks, but he's still got a lot to prove. I think, he's a winner. He has a World Series ring to his name. He also led the Colorado Rockies to the World Series. Granted, that was about 10 years ago when he was definitely one of the top 3 outfielders in the league. Yeah. But like I said, he's still got a lot of power in that bat and definitely a lot to give. I think it's going to be a great signing for the Yankees. I hope it works out. But that's what's always good about 1-year deals, is that if it doesn't work out, you can kind of give it up. You can kind of designate him for assignment, trade him. You've got options.
And if I'm not mistaken, just a little throw in there, he will be the oldest person on the team, right? It would either be him or CC.
I think, yeah, he'll probably be older than CC. I'm not exactly sure, actually.
So it's nice to know that we're moving in that direction where a 37-year-old is the oldest person on the team, as opposed to when we've had all these 38-plus-year-olds on the team throughout the last few years.
And yeah, he's about 5 months older, 6 months older than CC. So yeah, he'll provide a veteran leadership for the young guys, especially, like I said, Aaron Judge, Gary Sanchez, guys that are learning how to hit at the big leagues. We know Gary definitely appeared to have learned to hit at the big leagues, but that was only in a short amount of time. We got to see if he can replicate it. And Aaron Judge has a long way to go, but like I said, he could definitely learn a little bit from Matt Holliday, which is going to be good. I guess we can talk about Aroldis Chapman now. That was definitely the Yankees' kind of marquee signing of the offseason. 5 years, $86 million. Absolutely shattered the record for relief pitchers. Kind of as expected. Steve, what do you think about that signing?
Yeah, I think that the Chapman signing was one that the Yankees absolutely had to make, even if, Brian Cashman did nothing else this offseason. As long as he signed Brian Cashman, I think it would have been considered a successful offseason for the Yankees, because Aroldis Chapman is basically, he's a ratings drawer. In a long time, the Yankees are bereft of star power. When you think of the Yankees, you got basically the best players in the league, the biggest contracts. That's what people want to go to the ballpark to see. So it's no coincidence that attendance has been down the last few years as the star power has been down. And I think Chapman really solves that problem, because if you look at when he was pitching with his brief time with us last season, the stadium was electric. When Chapman came into the game, it got loud in there. And I personally saw this from a game that I went to and, just watching on TV. So I think from a marketing standpoint alone, it's a very smart move for the Yankees. But when you're looking on the field, he's probably one of, if not the best closers in baseball, definitely top 2. I don't know if Miller is going to be closing next year, so I don't really make that judgment there. We love Andrew Miller here. But Chapman is definitely very important for us. I think with him, and especially being able to move Betances back to a setup role where he's shown that he can excel, because he doesn't really look like he's totally suited for the closer's role. And we still have Tyler Clippard, who he's been pretty low-key since he got here, but he performs very well. Adam Warren. So we got a solid 4 pitchers at the back end of the bullpen. And we're obviously going to go into this a little bit later when we talk about the Jose Quintana rumors and possibly throwing David Robertson in there. But I think I wrote a piece about this, I think it was about a week or 2 ago. But I think if you look at last season's bullpen, the three names at the back end, Betances, Miller, and Chapman, were certainly better than any 3 names in this year's bullpen, because nobody can match Andrew Miller. But if you're to look at it in the aggregate, I think that this year's unit might be better than last year's. Yeah,
I mean, definitely with that combination of Tyler Clippard, Dylan Betances, Aroldis Chapman, and then you throw in Adam Warren and maybe even David Robertson, that is an incredible, what is that, like a 5-some? That's absolutely incredible. So with Chapman, you said he's a ratings guy. He'll definitely bring people to the ballpark. That's absolutely true. Average pitch speed last year was 100.9 miles per hour. That was obviously the fastest in the major leagues. And this is something I found incredibly interesting. I was looking at this a while back. StatCast they recorded all the fastest pitches in the major leagues this season, and they actually have an Aroldis Chapman filter on that. So Chapman threw 28 or 29 pitches faster than the next closest guy. So if you want to see the fastest pitches aside from Chapman, you have to turn that filter off, and you will see Mauricio Cabrera Yeah, he plays for the Atlanta Braves. That's what I thought. Okay.
Yeah, don't even know who that is.
But yeah, there's a Chapman filter. So that just kind of goes to show like the stardom that he has. I know there's a series on Netflix called Fastball, and they featured Aroldis Chapman, um, and how he threw his 105-mile-per-hour fastball, which is absolutely incredible. And not only his velocity, but as you said, one of the top two closers in the league. If you include Miller, then you've got a discussion there. But if you take Miller out of the equation, I think Chapman is absolutely the best closer in baseball. So, but I guess when Chapman signed with the Yankees, there were kind of two opposite sides to it. One side obviously didn't like it, and the other side did like it. And in my mind, if in baseball today, if you're going to sign a player, you've got to overpay him. And so, Chapman got $86 million as a guy who's going to throw, 70 innings a year. But I think that move was absolutely had to be done by Brian Cashman. I mean, if you're going to go out and sign a player, you're going to overpay him. We saw Jacoby Ellsbury get overpaid. Jason Hayward got overpaid.
Well, that's different, right? I think you could look at the Ellsbury signing and think that that was a mistake from the moment he gave out the contract. I knew I did. I thought it was absolutely absurd. But with Chapman, I never got that impression. I think it was necessary in the market.
And I'm not saying, this Chapman signing is a bad deal, but like I said, Chris Davis got overpaid for the Orioles, when he signed for what was $161 million with the Orioles as a guy who strikes out 200 times a season. Crazy. But the point is, like, if you want to sign your guy in baseball today, you've got to pay him. And Chapman wanted to get paid. Chapman wanted 6 years and $100 million. We gave him 5 years and 86. So I thought that was actually a minor victory for the Yankees. I'm not saying he took a discount by any means, because I think the Marlins him $80 million, but yeah, the Yankees went out and got their guy.
I thought the Marlins thing was pretty interesting because didn't they offer him slightly more money, but he was talking about how the franchise there's no clear direction. They've done this before. They've signed players and then traded them a year later, as we saw. I think it was in 2011, 2012 when they did that.
Actually,
yeah.
The Marlins may have offered Chapman more money. I think they actually
I think they did. Part of it maybe wanted to do with him wanting to get out of that area because of all the, the stuff surrounding him with his past domestic violence transgressions.
Right. I don't know.
And he's proven that he could excel here, so I think that's also a huge plus that I forgot to mention before.
I don't even want to talk about the domestic violence allegations because that's been completely overkilled. But, we know that story, and whether you fall on the side of, he is a domestic abuser or he is not, the point is he's the Yankees closer. That's all I want to talk about right now. That's all that's relevant.
Agree.
Anyways, I guess we'll transition to a different topic. Kind of the topic of the day, topic of the past couple days. Jose Quintana obviously we know the White Sox traded Chris Sale to the Boston Red Sox, and they're undergoing a complete rebuild. And the next one down the line that they're probably going to trade is Jose Quintana. He was their number 2 starter. Now he's obviously their ace. I definitely think he's one of the most underrated pitchers in the major leagues. Last year, he went 13-12 with a 3.20 ERA. Pretty solid numbers. Struck out 181 batters in 208 innings. He's a workhorse. He hasn't gotten injured since, well, actually, I don't think he's ever gotten injured. He started 33 games every season since 2013. And I think, if the Yankees were to go get him, it'd be a good move. But, the question is, like, is it the right time? Because, the Yankees, they want to rebuild, but they also want to contend. So, Steve, share your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think that as far as Quintana is concerned, of course, we'd love to have him. He'd be better than any starting pitcher that we have right now. Obviously, I'm not very high on Masahiro Tanaka, but we don't have to talk about that right now. Obviously, just from a talent standpoint, he would totally be a perfect fit here. But the price is going to be very high on that, and Brian Cashman is rightfully very hesitant to deal away our top prospects, considering we have a very good farm system now for the first time in a long time, and dealing from that strength isn't something the Yankees are necessarily wanting to do. I look at it like this. If the Yankees were maybe a player or two away from contending for a World Series championship, then it would make sense to make that deal. And the same could have been said for the Chris Sale trade, right? If you're that close and that one player is really going to make a difference, then you do it. But the way I look at it right now, the Yankees aren't there yet. I think we'll contend for a wild card spot, maybe even win one, but this is nowhere near a championship team. They're just a couple of years off, and they're looking to make their big strike in, what is it, the 2018
Yeah,
off
that's 20
season.
after the
That's
yeah.
big. After the 2018 season, that's when. So heading into 2019, that's when the Yankees will be back once again, hopefully. But again, Catania is also a guy who would help us in the long term, so it wouldn't really be a short term deal. So I'd definitely be amenable to looking into that as long as it doesn't cost more than two of our top prospects. And they also were talking about, there was a rumor this morning that David Robertson could possibly be thrown into the deal, as sort of the Yankees would eat the salary and then have to give up less, which personally, I mean, I don't know how you feel about it, Chad, but I'm no fan of David Robertson. I think he's probably one of the worst since Mariano Rivera left, the worst closer that we've had in those gaps that we've had, because ever since Rivera left, we've had a different closer every year, I just noticed, which is very interesting. Although this might be the same as last year heading in because of Chad. I don't know. It's confusing. But I'm, I'm not really a fan of Robertson. He's far too erratic. He has these Houdini moments that make me very nervous. Not to mention, he almost ruined Derek Jeter's last game at Yankee Stadium. I still don't forgive him for that. So, I mean, if we could bring in Robertson and conceivably slide him into the seventh inning role, that would make sense. And if it lessened the amount that we'd have to give up for Catania, then sure, I'm for it. But other than that, no, I don't see this deal happening. What about you?
So yeah, Jose Quintana obviously is going to come at a huge cost because he is signed for 5 years. Well, he signed a 5-year deal worth $26.5 million, $7 million a year, and he signed through 2019. So obviously that's an incredibly team friendly contract, and that's when you combine his talent with his contract, that's why his price is going to be so high. And I mean, the White Sox last year, they really liked Gary Sanchez and a deal for Chris Sale. Obviously, Gary Sanchez has reached that level where he's untouchable. Another guy that they liked, obviously, a lot of people like him, is Aaron Judge. I'm sure they like Clint Frazier. I'm sure they like Gleyber Torres, Jorge Mateo. But yeah, I mean, that's just not a deal that I necessarily see getting done, just because I do know for a fact that Brian Cashman is going to be reluctant to trade any of his top 5 guys. That's Frazier through like Rutherford. He's going to be very reluctant to trade any of those guys, and he's not going to get Jose Quintana without trading one of those top 5, if not 2 of those top 5 guys. And if you throw in Robertson, obviously I think if the Yankees eat his money, it is going to lessen the cost. But I think the Yankees are still going to have to throw in more prospects to get Robertson and Quintana, even though Robertson does make it a cheaper deal because the White Sox are trying to shell out money and also rebuild prospects. But I don't know if I see these teams being trade partners.
Well, to look at the starting rotation really quick, moving from Catania, if you look at it, it's a very big weakness. And I don't really see the Yankees doing anything besides a few low risk kind of guys. You look at the rotation, you have maybe 3 starters. You have Tanaka definitely, CC definitely, and Michael Pineda, unfortunately, which is basically a minus. So I don't think we should count him as a plus. So you have 2 starting pitcher slots that are going to be filled by 2 of, right now, if you look at it, Chad Green, Luis Sessa, Luis Severino, or Brian Mitchell, most likely. And I don't really feel comfortable moving into the 2017 season with permutations of any of those at the moment when you only have 1 reliable starter. So do you think that the Yankees are going to do anything, or do you think this is what we're going to be looking at next year? Because when you look at the team, that's obviously the number one weakness that everybody's going to point to.
Well, right. I wrote a Yankees offseason checklist article back in November, and number 1 was to sign Aroldis Chapman. They did that. Number 2 was to trade Brett Gardner. They haven't done that yet, and I don't know if they will. Number three was actually, as we're talking about, was to acquire a starter. And some of the names I listed were Jason Hamill, Derek Holland, who has been signed. I think he went to the Pirates. Rich Hill, who obviously went back to the Dodgers. And then you got a couple other guys like Tyson Ross, Brett Anderson, CJ Wilson. But I think I really do like Jason Hamill. He came off a 15-win season. But I don't think he's going to sign for any less than 2 or 3 seasons, believe it or not. And Tyson Ross is a guy who got his season was not only derailed by injuries, it was ended by injuries on opening day last season. And so surprisingly, he was non-tendered by the Padres, becoming a free agent. And I think if the Yankees go out and get anybody, it will be Tyson Ross on like a 1-year contract. But at the same time, I don't know. I mean, I don't know how Cashman feels about this team. I don't know if he thinks this team's a wild card team, if he thinks they're a division contending team, because obviously the Boston Red Sox are going to be the favorites to win the AL East. It's basically their division to lose at this point, and obviously we've heard that before. They've won the offseason a couple of seasons. I mean, what I'm saying is the offseason winners don't necessarily translate to
Exactly.
talent, but at this point in time, the Red Sox are definitely the favorites to win the AL East. And
Yeah.
like you said, the Yankees are going to be contending for a wild card at best, and it just depends on how intent Cashman is on and Girardi on playing these younger guys like Luis Sessa, Severino, Chad Green, Brian Mitchell, and another guy that could possibly make the rotation is Adam Warren, which is
I should mention that. I also was thinking because a couple of years ago he sort of pulled the Nathan Eovaldi deal out of nowhere because I didn't really see that coming. I mean, if we look back in hindsight, that was a very reckless move of him trading away, Martin Prado, who would fill in perfectly at third base. We never would have given Headley that terrible contract. And it just would have been smart to not deal for Eovaldi. But of course, at the time, the guy has great stuff. He throws very quickly. He has good pitches. So we think that he could be a good starting pitcher. That didn't exactly happen, and unfortunately he had his next couple of seasons and potentially career compromised. So I was just thinking maybe we might see another deal like that, which we weren't really expecting. Be like, oh, okay, that might make a little sense, but I can't think of anything off the top of my head. I don't know if you had any thoughts on that.
Yeah, it's hard to speculate and just kind of like you said, pull a deal out of thin air because we are not Brian Cashman. But yeah, I haven't even actually thought about that. I haven't considered that, but that's definitely an option on the table, and that's a very good reference because, yeah, like you said, I don't think anybody was expecting the Eovaldi trade to go down. But anyways, we'll kind of stick with the Quintana rumors. This was about 4 or 5 days ago. There was another rumor that Jose Quintana and Andrew McCutchen were involved in a three-way deal that did involve the Yankees. It had Jose Quintana going to the Pittsburgh Pirates for a package of Tyler Glasnow, Mitch Keller, Kevin Newman, and Elias Diaz. And then it had Andrew McCutchen coming to the Yankees, and the Yankees would be giving Blake Rutherford and Miguel Andujar. Obviously, all these prospects would be going to the White Sox, and the White Sox would be giving up Quintana. Actually, well, some of them would have to go to Pittsburgh, obviously, but I would think. I don't really know exactly the prospect breakdown, but the point is the Yankees were rumored to be linked to Andrew McCutchen, and they would be giving up Blake Rutherford and Miguel Andujar. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that. I will say this is a rumor that was tweeted by a not necessarily credible individual, but at the same time, I wouldn't rule it out because Dave Williams from Barstool, he's a Chicago White Sox Barstool writer, and he's broken numerous deals, and he confirmed it. So, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily rule it out. It would be interesting to see Andrew McCutchen in pinstripes.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those deals that I think it's just off-season chatter. I don't really see any validity to it because getting Andrew McCutchen and giving up a top prospect doesn't really make sense for the Yankees. We already have two aging outfielders in Brett Gardner and Jacoby Ellsbury. And we have obviously Frazier coming up and Aaron Judge, who will be here next season. So I don't really see the need that McCutchen fills. Granted, he's a very talented player, and in the short term, he would be very exciting to watch. But I don't see him really helping the Yankees long term. If we were going to make a move, it would make more sense to get the guy that the White Sox are giving to the Pirates and not really helping facilitate that trade in a way.
Right.
If you look at, I just looked it up. Andrew McCutchen is 30. When's he a free agent, Jet?
He's a free agent after 2018. He's going to be in that big class with Manny Machado.
After 2018. Okay. And we've already established that the Yankees likely won't compete until around then for a championship. Right. So it's a move that doesn't necessarily make sense. And I can't realistically see it happening.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I mean, sorry, it's echoing. I can hear myself. Yeah, I agree with you on. I don't think Andrew McCutchen is a good fit for the Yankees right now. Like you said, they've got two aging outfielders already, and then they've got young guys that are coming up. So it doesn't really make sense for them to trade, like I said earlier, top prospects for a star who's also aging. And it doesn't make much sense because I am in 100% agreement with you that the Yankees aren't going to contend for a title until about 2019, when the young guys get some seasoning under their belt, and then we also potentially sign Manny Machado or Bryce Harper. Obviously, everybody talks about that all the time, so we won't go too far in depth about that. What I do want to talk about, though, this is going to be relevant over the next couple of weeks, is the Hall of Fame ballot. We actually did a Hall of Fame ballot, a mock Hall of Fame ballot, which we will be releasing in the next couple days. So I'm not going to spoil any of that, but the results were pretty surprising from us. And I don't know, Steve, what are you expecting in this year's Hall of Fame ballot? Who do you think is going to be elected and stuff like that?
Well, the three players who really stand out to me when you look at this year's class, you have Vlad, who I think Vlad is a very safe bet to get in, Vladimir Guerrero, that is, and also your long lost uncle, Tim Raines. I think that he should get in. Again, it's a safe bet. I'm also very big on Edgar Martinez, but I don't see that happening this time. There's a third that I voted for that I can't remember at the moment. It's Vlad Raines, and who is the third?
You voted for Edgar Martinez, and I know that.
Yeah, there was one more who should have
Hoffman or Jeff Bagwell.
Hoffman, Trevor Hoffman, yes.
Yeah, so Trevor Hoffman's definitely one of the best closers of all time. I don't really know how he isn't in yet, because before Mariano Rivera retired, Hoffman had that all-time saves record. So there's actually this guy on Twitter. His is at not Mr. Tibbs. He kind of tracks these Hall of Fame ballots, and he's got a spreadsheet and everything. And through 114 ballots, obviously there's going to be about 435 ballots. So we're only about 27% of the way in. But Jeff Bagwell has 92% of the vote. Hoffman has 73. Vlad has 76. Tim Raines in his last year on the ballot has 90% of the vote. And then Pudge Rodriguez has 84.2% of the vote. So I guess if you were to end the Hall of Fame voting right now, it would be Pudge Rodriguez, Tim Raines, Vlad Guerrero, and Jeff Bagwell that got in. Another two guys that are actually a lot closer than I expected are Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens. They both sit at 71.7%. So basically, everybody that's voting for Bonds is also voting for Clemens. That's kind of expected. But yeah, the steroid guys, I was talking to Steve about this last night. I actually expect the steroid guys to take a big leap this year. I'm not even sure what percent they were at last year, but I think that they're going to be a lot closer this year, especially with Bud Selig getting in the Hall of Fame. Bud Selig was the commissioner during the steroid era, and I don't want to say he let steroid use happen, but he wasn't as hard as he should have been. So I think in the writers' minds, since Bud Selig was elected, you could see the steroid guys taking a jump, and then ultimately Bonds and Clemens getting in.
Just for clarification, I just looked it up now. Clemens was at 45.2% last year, and Bonds was at 44.3%. So that, like you said, it's a significant jump. As far as Bud Selig's concerned, we have to remember that, like you said, he wasn't encouraging it, but he was complicit. He knew what was happening, and he did nothing about it. And then later on, when it became a big deal, he decided to selectively enforce the steroid punishments against certain players, such as Alex Rodriguez, as us Yankee fans know very well. So I think that's a stain on his legacy. And if you're going to let him in, I think that opens the door for the other steroid players. And like I was telling you last night, I think as soon as one player, whether it be Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens this year, whether it be one of them or whether it be somebody else next year, whether it be one of them most likely next year, I think that once that one player finally gets in, then we will be able to vote in the steroid users into the Hall of Fame, because you can't just completely erase an entire era from baseball history. It's just not something you could conceivably do. If they need to have their own section, which is, the asterisk section for potentially accused steroid users, which that would also be a very convoluted matter, but they have to get in. It's going to happen eventually. Will this be the year? We don't know. Signs are pointing that it might be. Hopefully it is, but I don't really know at this point, because a lot of these writers who are tasked with electing players to the Hall of Fame seem very stubborn and not wanting to get off of their high horses at the moment. So it's definitely sort of a toss-up.
Yeah, and in my mind, Bud Selig was going to get into the Hall of Fame. Basically, every commissioner in any sport ever has gotten into the Hall of Fame. So that was bound to happen regardless. But yeah, I mean, we're only 27% of the way through the ballots, and these are legit ballots. He's actually tracking it. People are emailing him their ballots. They're tweeting their ballots and anonymously sending him their ballots. So these are legit numbers. And Clemens and Bonds, they both sit at about 72%. So I think that's going to drop maybe 10 to 15% from now until it's over. So I don't think they're going to get in this year, because they already don't have 75%. I don't see them getting much more. Yeah. But like I said, I think they're going to take a big jump this year, and they're going to be on writers' radars more than they have been in the past, I think. And I think ultimately Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens will get in. They've still got 5 more years on the ballot. And then Tim Raines, this is his last year on the ballot. It's good to see him have 91% because I've always said this. If you
Why
take
is that?
well, other than his last name, if you take Ricky Henderson out of baseball, Tim Raines is the best leadoff hitter you've ever seen in your whole life. So I think he's got to get in. And like you said, Edgar Martinez, he's going to come close, but I don't think he's going to make it. But realistically, I see Bagwell probably getting in. He was really close last year, 71. I don't know what he got last year, but I'm pretty sure Bagwell was pretty close last year.
Last year, Jeff Bagwell,
Yeah.
he was at 71.6%.
Yeah, so I see him getting in this year. I see Vlad getting in this year. Tim Raines, I see getting in. And then Ivan Rodriguez and Vlad Guerrero, I think, are going to be pretty close to getting in. We'll see. If they don't get in this year, though, this is their first year on the ballot. They have plenty more time to get in.
Yeah, just to sort of cap that, I'm going to agree with you on the most part. I'm going to say Hoffman, Raines. I think Vlad's going to get in, and I'm sort of on the fence about Bagwell. So basically, we're the same, except I'll flip-flop Vlad and Bagwell's position.
Yep. All right. So we're about 30 minutes in. We usually cap these at about 30 minutes. Yeah. So I'm going to discuss some like administrative things for the BBB, basically, and then we're going to head on out. Steve, if you want to say anything before I say this, because then we're going to end it right here.
I'll just say something briefly about the offseason. I think that we're really done seeing the Yankees make any moves. Maybe we'll see a couple of low-profile signings that the Yankees hope they could hit gold with, whether it be a relief pitcher, a starting pitcher, or even a position player. But I don't see anything notable happening for the rest of the offseason. I think it's just going to be chatter for the sake of chatter. And I'm looking forward to spring training and another Yankee baseball season at the BBB.
Absolutely. Yeah. So as far as the BBB goes, we are looking to add more writers. We have about 20 to 25 writers right now. I say that kind of loosely because I've got to see where some guys stand. But yeah, we're looking to add 5 to 10 more and hopefully go into the 2017 season pretty strong with about 30 writers. So definitely, if you're interested, shoot us a message or just go to our blog and straight up apply. We'll get back to you pretty quickly. Another thing administratively that we're going to be starting in the next month or so, our prospect team, just like we did last year, we're going to be re-ranking the prospects 1 through 30, and we're going to be publishing features on like what we expect from them this season and down the line. We're going to start that in probably about February. One more thing that we're going to do also, we've done this in the past, but we haven't done this in a very structured manner. We're going to do pinstripe previews, which is basically us previewing every Yankee on the 40-man roster. But this year, I actually want to cover every player, and so that's something we're going to dive into a bit. And yeah, we're definitely excited for the new season to come. Like Steve said, not sure if the Yankees will make any more bigger moves, but we saw them sign Ruben Tejada on a minor league contract, I think.
Oh, how could we not mention that? I forgot.
Yeah, that might be the difference maker between the Yankees winning the World Series and not. But yeah, like Steve mentioned, a bunch of low-key signings. I think you can expect that, some guys on minor league deals. But until then, I guess the MLB offseason is going to be pretty slow. Hopefully the Yankees do something, but like I said, they're getting younger, and I think that's their primary focus going into 2017 is just competing, but also getting these guys ready to make a splash in 2019. We pretty much covered everything today. Thanks for tuning in, everybody, and we'll catch you guys next time, probably in 2017.
Yep. Peace out, 2016. 2017 will be a great year. Go Yankees.